good morning, and welcome this morning to our SonRise Project weekly support group call. We are honored that you are here with us this morning for this open session with Dr. Linda McGhee. And to get us started, let's start with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And this morning, we are here for our monthly open session with Dr. Linda McGhee. You know Dr. Linda McGhee, most of you, I believe probably all of you know her. I'll share a very brief bio and then she'll tell you more about herself. Dr. Linda McGhee hails, well, she lives in the district, the DMV, which we
Yes.
lovingly call the District, Maryland, and Virginia area. She's a clinical psychologist, attorney, a nationally recognized expert and speaker, and she's been featured everywhere. Admit the rest of these people.
I need to hire you for PR, Kelly.
Oh, absolutely. That's part of my day job. That's what we do on the
Yeah,
day side.
I
Um,
know that. I can't
and
afford you
so
though.
Yeah, very funny. You're funny. And she has been just a lifeline for me and my family. She does testing, she does therapy, both for adults and for children. She has a specialty in Black teens, young adults, and children. And then, of course, us parents. She's been helping me since, gosh, Kyle was born. And he's almost 22. So for 22 years. So we have agreed at the SonRise Project to have an open session, and Dr. Linda McGhee has graciously agreed to volunteer her time to be here with us on the first Sunday of every month. So it's like having a therapy session online with our closest friends who might be going through things very similar to what we're going through. And so it's a safe space for us to come together and share and be vulnerable. Sometimes we might want to listen. Sometimes we might want to share. Whatever you want to do, this is a place to do that. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Linda McGhee, who is coming to us from California. She's on the West
Yes.
Coast, so it's 6 a.m. out there. But thank you as always for being here on this beautiful Sunday morning.
Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning.
I actually think that I met you when you came to a meeting and you were pregnant.
Oh,
When you
and I
came, I
think I
think you
brought
were
Kyle when
pregnant
he
with,
was 2 weeks old. I brought Kyle to
yeah,
a sister
you
mom's
you
meeting.
I know, but you were pregnant with Chris.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's when I first met you. So, like, I mean, literally, I've known one of your child since he was tiny, and the other
Yeah.
one in vitro.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
hi, good morning, everyone. I am really happy to come to you today. I am in outside of Stockton, California. Someone told me, Kelly, this morning that Stockton is like is a rough place. I don't know. You guys put it in the chat for those you know. But he says it's the cousin to Oakland, which I thought was really funny. So I'm here doing I have a lot of technical speeches about psychology, trauma, race, various technical forms of assessment. But the number one thing that people are requesting right now is self-care and self-healing. All around the country, clinicians, childcare workers, doctors are needing support to keep themselves going and to avoid burnout. So that's why I'm here. I'm coming back to DC today, but what was on my mind to just sort of kick off the conversation, because we don't have a huge group today, is this, Kelly. What do you do when, and Dee's on the line too, is the challenges of parenting an adult, a young adult. And even as young adults, they oftentimes make bad decisions. And how do you set boundaries, but on the by the same token, you still are their parents and you have to provide support, and you have to actually keep them help put them back together when they make mistakes. And so that was what was on my mind today. is, and I had a conversation with my husband where I basically said, well, we're still the mom and dad, and we have to like be nice,
Mhm.
even in the face of mistakes. So I
Mhm.
wanted to just throw the conversation open with Kelly and Dee, and while everybody's kind of warming up this morning.
Yeah, the biggest thing I've learned with adult children is to fully and wholly allow them to walk their own journey. And I did not do this when they were in high school. But now I've learned that I did them a disservice by helicopter parenting, by, by holding tight, trying to quote unquote protect them. Now, one of them might call and want to talk about an idea. A good example, Kyle wants to start a business, and the business is delivering, it's a legal business, it's delivering snacks and nicotine on college campuses. And I have a visceral reaction to the nicotine part and the vaping part and all those things. Um, but instead of saying, I really don't think that's a good idea, aren't there some other options? What happened to this? I just said, oh, okay. And I listened. Where'd the idea? And I got curious. I started to ask questions. Well, how'd you come up with this idea? Then he started, telling me more, telling me more. Have you done some research? Well, yeah, this school's this, and actually had done some research. Well, what are you thinking about for your business plan? Are you doing a business plan? Well, no, we thought we would do such and such. How are you setting up your business? Is it an LLC or a sole proprietorship? I recommend an LLC. What's that? I have an opportunity to teach without looking like I am, telling him what not to do or how to do it. So that's the biggest thing for me. And then learning to say no. So I realized with Kyle, he was spending all his money, and he's 21, he'll be 22 soon, spending all his money on things that I disagree with, betting and
Mhm.
alcohol and whatever. He's that age where, and he's grown, he can do whatever he wants. But to make some money and then it's gone the next day. And up until now, could see his bank account. Um, and so he would send me a note, Mom,
Maybe that's not a
sure,
good
I
thing
don't have
either.
that
That's what
anymore.
I'm
Sure.
thinking.
I closed the account. And so he said, Mom, can you send me some money for such and such? And I responded, no, that's it. And
Mhm.
he responded, okay. Didn't take
Mhm.
an explanation. It was just no. So it was a simple, peaceful no. Without I can't believe you spent all your money. You just had $500 yesterday. Ah, I didn't
Right,
do any of
right,
that. I just said no.
right, right.
And that is so much more peaceful for me. And it also is helping him learn that I'm not always going to be here. And you
Right.
can't take advantage like that. And you really have to start learning how to take care of yourself. But
I
there
mean,
was
I 100% received that this morning, Kelly. Thank you so much for that. When the therapist needs those words.
But
Dee,
how
did you?
hard is that? Super hard. Because even when he said, Mom, stop
Yes,
looking
it's
at my
very
account.
hard. It's very
Mom,
hard.
yeah, Moms, you need to stop looking at my bank account. I said, you know what? We should probably close the account. That way you can get your own
Right,
account.
right.
How hard was that? But I did it, and now I have no access. And he has no access to an easy transfer. I can't do that. But it looks like we have a hand up. Good morning.
Good morning. I just want to say I support you in that, my oldest is 15, and I realize that I'm probably part of the problem as to why I feel my child is spoiled and privileged. And I did recently as well. Like, in my world, it's just simple things like, um, oh, she plays two sports. Oh, I left my stuff, after 3 times in a week, and I'm leaving work and running to do things. And I was just like, you leave it again. And it's like, you just won't be starting. You're not playing because you can't just inconvenience my life all the time because I'm going to be there. So, at 15, I feel like I need to kind of take a step back and let her learn to be responsible and more independent and not always depend on me
Mhm,
on everything.
mhm,
So and
mhm,
I know your son is older, but I'm just saying, even as a teenager, I have to make these adjustments, so.
I mean,
absolutely.
and your point is good because that's where you start. right? You know, like if you wait until they're 24, then they really are, it really is hard to get them to see that, you know, the world doesn't revolve around them. I think like 15, where you can kind of control the consequences, which is that she might not play in a game. You know, I think that is actually a better way to do it than to wait until they're 24. D,
Agree.
I called on you earlier and you didn't say anything. I just want to make sure that I didn't go by you.
Yeah, I was just waiting. The other caller had her hand up, and so I
Mm-hmm.
was gonna wait. But this is somewhat timely. The biggest part of parenting that I'm finding hard now. I have three children, ages 24, 22, and 18. And as you already know, my 22-year-old is diagnosed with autism and an intellectual disability. And the biggest parenting challenges that I'm having right now is my husband and I not agreeing on how to parent and our views on any given situation. So it causes confusion amongst the children because if we are not aligned, naturally they're going to gravitate towards the parent that's more lenient and more supportive in what they want. So that has been an ongoing challenge for me.
Right. We've talked about the parent misalignment a lot on here. And a couple of things I just want to toss out there because there are no easy answers, and I think I mentioned on a couple of SonRise shows, this is what I'm writing about now. Like, how as parents, how do we parent when we're coming from different perspectives and each of us having our own set of healing that we have to do? You come to the table with how you grew up, who your parents were, how they treated you, how they communicated with people, how they form relationships. That's how you come to parenting. You come to marriage like that, and you come to parenting like that. And even if there's no conflicts in the relationships, you just come at things differently. You know, I have 11 brothers and sisters, I grew up with 7 brothers and 4 sisters. My husband has 2 siblings, but he's like 7 and 8 years younger than them. So in effect, he's an effective functional only child. And our perspectives are completely different with regard to a lot of parenting challenges because I grew up more independently with all those kids, and he grew up where, you know, his family kind of like did more for him. Um, but when there's conflict, that just makes it that much worse. And it's just really hard to work with someone and compromise with someone who, you know, may not be inclined to do so. And a lot of times that works to the disadvantage of the kid, especially if the child is going to the lenient parent and being able to get permission to do stuff around the parent who is less strict. Um, so, you know, those are tough situations normally because a lot of times, you know, I would advise for people to start going to therapy, but a lot of the times one of the parent would not agree to that, to get parent guidance. So those are the toughest of situations. And, um, you know, my best advice or best thoughts to G and anyone else that's listening is that if you can't get the other person to go to someone and maybe get parenting and get some help parenting where it's less conflictual and more beneficial for the kid, is that maybe you yourself go, because that way you can, best I can say it is, keep saying yourself throughout the process and get some tips about how to deal with the spouse who, you know, might not be cooperative, and just learn tips about how to deal with the child when you're dealing with them one-on-one. Oh, and I was going to add, I work with a family where I work with the mom because the dad wouldn't come in, and it's been reversed, but most of the time the dad is the person, unfortunately, that doesn't want to come to therapy. But a lot of times I work with her and the child on how the way that he was being parenting wasn't helping him. And so being able to have that conversation with him and laugh with him about, you know, they kind of let you have your way, but that has not really taught you how to become independent, and working with the child himself on the parental differences and helping him to see that when he tries to exploit the difference between the parents, it's not helpful for him because he's not learning. So I just wanted to add, like, if you get a good therapist, a good person that can help you navigate, even if all the child, the parent, and the child and the parents aren't all three there, a lot of times you can get some help anyway. Anybody else have any questions, concerns, or tried things that might have worked to deal with those kind of parenting situations? Number one. And anybody just have any questions, period? It's open. I was gonna say open mic, Kelly. It's open. It's open process Sunday.
If you're on your phone, you can hit *6 to come off of mute. If you are on your phone, it's *6. If you are on your computer, you can hit the mute button to unmute. It really is an open call. So in our feedback forms, people wanted an opportunity to share and to get some advice or help, whether it's from one another or from an expert who's a clinician, a psychologist. Looks like we have somebody off of mute.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. I have a question. We have an adult son who'll soon be graduating in 2 weeks. Yay, going from HU. And so from Hampton. And he had a situation that occurred with him breaking up with his girlfriend earlier this year in February. So of course it kind of caused him to be depressed and all of that. And so he kind of finally shared with us, what it was that, a little bit of the breakup, but, just how it's been impacting him basically. Right. And so we have, his dad and I have talked with him and I have, we try to be really sensitive and I'm asking, being open and curious. I am talking really, trying to empathize and sympathize with everything that he's going through, all of that, and just really trying to listen. And a lot of times sometimes it's kind of hard to get things out of my son. He can just pause for long times. I'm like, okay, son, are you still there? What's going on? But he said something that my husband and I were like, we don't understand this. He's like, well, you guys, your answers are kind of typical, right? And because we were just kind of, after we were listening to him for a while, and we were like, hey, have you thought about this, and maybe this could help or whatever. And but it's like your answer's kind of typical. I didn't want to hear advice, or I didn't want to hear that. And this came after a long stint of just listening, and we spoke to him about 2 hours. And he's like, that's why I didn't really want to share anything. And then he said, it's just not comforting. Your words not comforting. So I'm like, what is comforting, right? Because he was telling us some of the things that some of his friends have said to him, which are the same exact things that we would have said to him or did say to him, but they're comforting, but we're not, right? And I'm like,
Right.
I don't get this. And so some of his friends are telling, man, get over it, da, 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 and we didn't come that way with him, but or his coach or whatever. And I'm like, I don't get this. So it's frustrating because a part of that we just don't ask ourselves, well, what does being comforting look like? Tell me what would that sound like? How is it that we can support you? What is it that you actually need? And he can't really tell us what that is, but yet we're not being comforted with the words that we're telling you. I don't need to hear the stories of when you guys were. And it's like, okay, we get it, because we're trying to relate. Everybody has had their heartbreak, all of that. But we really, that time we didn't go into the stories and all of that. But for some reason, that's what he says. So we're just kind of baffled on even how to really effectively communicate with him, because this thing about comforting, I don't even know what that looks like. and he doesn't know how to explain it. And as my husband heard me talk to him, I mean, I'm talking, the way I would talk to my client. I'm just, I'm very slow. I'm pausing. I'm tracking with him. I'm, all of that, but yet that's not enough. So I just, we're just kind of just don't know what to think about that.
Okay. So I was just jotting down a couple of notes. But I want to say one is that you being close enough to him to have these conversations and the fact that you know about the breakup, you're 80% there. Okay. That you're in relationship enough with him that he told you about a breakup means that you're doing a pretty daggone good job. I can't, as much as I love my mother, as close as I was to her, I never told her a story of a breakup in my entire life. So you're
Me
almost
either.
there. Huh?
I said I didn't either. And
Yeah,
I think that's the thing too. It's not like I want to know all the details,
right.
because I figure they're grown. And if,
Mm-hmm.
we just was curious, like what happened? Because they was like tracking. I thought this was going to maybe be the daughter-in-law. I don't know.
Right.
But then when they didn't, and if he didn't, he kept saying, I don't want to talk about it. So I'm like, okay, cool. I wasn't going to push it. And then one day he called us with his counselor from
Mm-hmm.
school because he started getting therapy through. I'm like, okay, so what's happening? What's going on? And so that's how we started knowing a little bit more about what's going on.
Yeah. And so I wanted to just add a couple of things though. But I wanted to make sure that I showcase to you and everybody on the line that you're doing a pretty daggone good job. Number two is parents are always the target of frustration, right? Because they can do it, right? So if he calls his guy friends or even any of his friends and he's like, oh, I don't want to hear that. That would not go over in the same way, but they know they can say that to you. Okay. So you gotta put those kinds of statements with a grain of salt, right? Because they have two meanings on two different levels. One is this sort of that you will take it. Two is that kind of language is like a typical teenager who's a young adult who's individuating or moving away from his parents to kind of push back a little bit automatically. It's a part of becoming an adult and it's pretty typical. And also part of becoming an adult is my parents don't know nothing, right? So everything's different. Even though like heartbreak and breakups been happening since the beginning of time, and certain things are common, y'all don't know nothing. So I just want to give you the opportunity to understand what he's saying to you, but what he's not saying to you. So let's get to that and what he might need. He's individuating, and remember I used that word, meaning he's stepping away from y'all. But the doctors call this thing the second individuation, right? So when a child is a toddler, when they walking away from you, they're always looking back to make sure that their parents are there, right? And so he's in his second individuation. He's walking away, but he wants you close no matter what comes out of his mouth. All right. Remember, he called you, right? You would have never known unless, the woman didn't show up later. It could have been a year before you thought to ask. But he wants you close. But he kind of want to dictate terms. So he wants you to be there when he looks back. So then a couple of things about what to say. Breathe in, breathe out frustration on him critiquing what you say. And a couple of things you can do is to ask him, all right, what do you need today? How can I support you today? Ask him what he wants. Put the ball in his court. He's probably going to say something vague. He's probably not going to know what he wants. But what he wants is that you to stand by and listen to him tell you. And he wants to, put the ball in his court because he might tell you, Mom, I just need to come home for the weekend, or I need for you to talk to my counselor, or, so ask him what he wants. Help him to articulate and think through what he wants as opposed to just tossing off everything that you say. And finally, a lot of times we want children that are problem solvers, but we don't support them in becoming problem solvers. Like we want to come in and we want to solve the problem ourselves. So help him to understand just that you heard what he said. Start off like that. Ooh, that's rough. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Breakups are rough, without relating it to any of your own experiences. Just mirror that you understand him and that you're empathetic with the fact that these breakups are a lot. And the first big breakup is a lot in human existence. So those are the two things that I would just say to you. It's like, what do you need today? When he calls you and he's saying, such and such happened. How can I support you? Would it be, and if he says, I just want to hear your voice. Okay, great. Don't necessarily feel like you have to go in and solve it. A lot of times he just wants to hear your voice while he's telling you the problem. Does that help?
What I hear you saying is like, listen, which it
Yes.
sounded like
Yeah.
the caller says she listens and tries really hard to
Right.
listen.
Yeah. And that she should just keep doing that, because he's on a couple of levels just sort of echoing or pushing off some frustration he has. There's no easy answers, Mom, to a heartbreak. There's no easy solutions. You don't have the magic pill. You can't go get him in your car with his lacrosse stick. There's no easy solutions to a breakup. And that's another thing, is like, you can emphasize to him that this is a, emotional process and it's going to take time, but that it will get better.
Yeah, it's funny you said lacrosse, because that's what he plays, lacrosse.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it had gotten really serious where he started contemplating suicide and all kinds of, and I was like,
Mm,
what is going on? And so it was more than just, a breakup, and
mhm,
sad and depressed,
mhm,
which is, but it was getting deeper. So we was like, what's happening? And so we were trying to sit with that, the
mhm,
trauma of it all for him,
mhm.
and and to try to hold that space for him, to try to hold. We can't hold the pain for him. He has to hold the
Mhm,
pain, but just sit there with him. But it just became so difficult for him to even share
mhm.
um, a lot of what's going on, and us trying to pull things out of him, because he would
Right,
just sit there and
right,
not really say much. And
right.
so I couldn't identify what it is that he did need, because he wouldn't share.
But
So
you just
mhm,
sitting on the line with him. Excuse me for interrupting you.
mhm,
You just being there on the line with him is oftentimes helpful, because it's like if he were sitting in the room with you, it's the same thing. He needs to just be in your presence. Now, I'm happy that you've gotten help, and because that those silences can also suggest depression. And so, he's gotten support to help get through this, and you guys did the right and appropriate thing there. But the last thing I wanted to say is that for you and other parents is that, the newest data and studies that have come out about African American males and females and suicide are a little bit different for Black kids and for white kids and other kids, is that there's usually those thoughts and then unfortunate actions come about as some sort of relationship fissures and
mm,
relationship lapses. And they don't necessarily have prolonged periods of thinking that it's event driven. So like within 48 hours, the average Black kid that contemplates suicide on a major breakup, some kind of relational blow up with their parents, relational blow up with friends, separation from friend group. So like be on the lookout for those types of things, because those are the things that precipitate African American kids to have those thoughts and have those actions. So if your child is talking about those kinds of events and they're talking about them in ways where there's long pauses or they're really agitated, see about maybe getting them to counseling services at their school or an appointment with a counselor, because that is what precipitates and motivates African American children. And then one last word I wanted to say about that. I think we're not going to be able to quantify this in our lifetimes, but the shifts based on social media and COVID have left African American children at some social deficits. And I think that they're even having a harder time with what would already be a heartbreaking situation of a breakout because of the intensity of the emotions of when they're in relationships and their inability to modulate them. Does that make
Yeah,
any sense?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we're that we're proud of. I mean, he sought out getting therapy at
Yes.
school, so he did that.
But you
And
laid the foundation for that, Mom. You
yeah,
left that as open in your household.
yes, yes. And so we're grateful for that. And thank you for the compliment of how well, we try to parent our adult children. But it's, and so we're grateful that he did that. And so he brought us into that conversation. And that was that was the first conversation that we actually had, was when he called us from school and said he was on his way to therapy to see his school counselor, and he wanted us to join in on that session. So that was the first time. And so that's when we came to know about all the things that was actually happening, and to what degree, because we thought it was just okay, a typical breakup, and
Mm-hmm.
never knew it impacted him in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So thank you. I receive everything you said. Thank you.
Well, one last thing I want to say before we move on and maybe involve Kelly with this also is we're turning the corner in the African American community about talking about these issues. We still have a long way to go and we still have issues of stigma, but I can tell by the way our children are talking and utilizing help that we're turning the corner. I had a young man who's pretty well known in the community and nationally come into my office, sit in the lobby, and I heard him say, man, I'm going to go into therapy. And I was just like, a 25-year-old person who's pretty well known in the community to say that means that as African Americans, we are really we've worked hard, we've put in the work to start recognizing mental health, and we just need to keep going and get our kids and ourselves into treatment. Kelly's out there doing a lot promoting mental health, and I was just wondering what she sees.
Well, I see still with older people, I consider
Yes.
myself older, still a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stigma. In fact,
Uh-huh.
today, a friend of mine, her name is Shanti Das. She's been here many times, well, maybe not many times, but she runs an organization called Silence the Shame. It's all about the shame and the stigma of
Mm-hmm.
mental health. So I still see parents struggling.
Oh,
Maybe not people that are
absolutely.
here, but struggling with the shame. What did I do wrong? It's my fault. I wasn't there
Mm-hmm.
enough. If I didn't spend enough time. Those
Mm-hmm.
things, I still see that and try to encourage people. I encourage people to not have that shame and guilt because I had that as
Mm-hmm.
well, 5 years ago. Um, with our young people, with Black men especially, I'll say this first, I see huge increases in depression and
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. And
Yes.
finally, like you
Among
said,
all of us, actually.
yeah,
Yes.
the willingness to start talking about it, but slowly. And with our young people, they're in their phones all day. So they're used to communicating this way and more open, I think. I've seen young people being more open to getting help, wanting to talk about it, but not necessarily having the communication tools to talk about it. Like the previous person just said with her son, who's about to graduate, and congratulations on that. That's amazing. Um, so I'm seeing, but also the spikes, as you know, massive spikes of suicide attempts.
Particularly among the very young African Americans.
Absolutely. As
And
well as
and yeah,
depression and
and one of the
anxiety.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
done. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is that uh, Dr. Lindsay, who's at NYU, Michael Lindsay, who I've spoken with, and is a really strong part of the community on studying suicidality. He has, listed that, there are ways that African American boys interact with the system, and they may have actually died by suicide, but they're not reported as such. So I don't think that, and they behave in ways that are dangerous, like taking drugs, and they might die of an overdose, but that's not considered suicide. And Dr. Alvin Poussant first came up with that theory where it's like, it really is a suicide, right? But you get in a confrontation, or you don't take care of yourself at all. There's a child that is in the news right now in the DMV that didn't report some medical conditions that he had to his parents, and has died. So there are all kinds of ways that children are in our community are dying, but we're not calling them suicide. So, I just wanted to throw that out there also. Because getting on drugs and fentanyl, because you're depressed and you're trying to medicate, particularly kids with bipolarity and some significant signs of serious mental illness like schizophrenia, they self-medicate, and often with disastrous consequences.
Right. The other thing is I'm seeing that the recent data says 42% of high school students either felt so sad or hopeless almost every day, 42%, for at least 2 weeks in a row that they stopped doing their usual activities. And 1 in 5 high school students have seriously considered attempting suicide. 22%. Yeah.
And they've been isolated. Like let's just take someone that's Chris's age. Chris is now what, 19?
It'll be 19 Tuesday.
Uh-huh. Okay, so they had a year and a half, basically a school outage, right? So their end of high school was completely disrupted. Their learning was disrupted. Their emotional learning, the end of high school is where you kind of start solidifying your social being, who you are, how you put yourself out there in the world. So they miss time being able to develop themselves. And then they missed opportunities to interact. Like one of the reasons why I was really happy the person came on the line earlier is that I'm seeing these big breakups happen later, right? Because normally they would happen in high school nowadays, because kids usually have a relationship in high school, but they're happening like later into college. And so I feel like it means that the impacts are exacerbated because it happened so late in time. Like it didn't happen when a child was a teenager. So you get to see like all the things that they missed, the proms, and it should not be a surprise to us that they're depressed and they're anxious and they're worried. All of the things that, the typical 19-year-old wouldn't necessarily be because of the circumstances of what's happening right now.
Right. Absolutely. Does
I
anybody else
can't,
want to share today? Okay.
yeah, I can't see the chat. So if someone can tell me, because the sun's in my face.
It's a thank you for the congratulations for the graduation. And then I put the link to
Absolutely.
the survey for this week, a 2-question survey. But feel free to, oh, someone else is coming in. If you want to ask a question or want to share, I will add that one thing that Linda said, and then I'll read this note in the chat. Chris called me one night and just wanted to be on FaceTime. And I was in the library. He's at the Naval Academy and he wanted to just study. And so I was like, is everything okay? He was like, yeah. Can you just stay there for a minute? I was like, okay. And then we were on FaceTime. So I put the phone down right next to where I was sitting in the living room. And I think it must have felt like how it always used to feel in high school, where you'd be in the kitchen, little nook in the kitchen, and I'd be sitting, across the way on my computer, on the couch with my laptop with the TV on, like I always am. And I think he wanted that sense of comfort. And we were on the phone, not saying a word for over an hour, just on FaceTime. And then finally said, okay, I'm good. I'm heading back to my dorm
Mhm.
now. I said, okay.
I mean, it's like that. It's just like he would be laying next to you on the couch.
Hmm.
It's the exact same thing, but it's kind of hard to read with boys, isn't it? Because they
Right.
don't, the girl would
And
just be
not
like,
ask
Mom,
questions.
I need an hour of your time. But the boys just sort of, and it's hard for us to sometimes pick up the breadcrumbs.
Hmm.
One of the things that I noticed, even with a child that's closer to Kyle's age than Chris is, mine is 24, is a lot of times he'll like seek out time with me in ways that are at first weren't obvious. Like, I'll come pick you up from the airport, or just things like that. And it's like, okay, so it took me a while to figure out he just wants time where
Yes.
not where I'm not doing anything else.
Right.
And he can tell me about what's going on and who's he's going out with and
Mhm.
those kinds of things. And so with boys, you just gotta look for the clues. And when they are say they want that time, you, try your hardest to give it to them.
That's right.
When they show up from college for the weekend, try to have at least 3 or 4 hours that you could spend with them where you can sort of hear or be there when they first get there with the meal or something like that. Just so you can hear what's going on, because a lot of times you will get more if you're just available.
That's right. And listening more versus
Right.
talking. So this note is in the chat that says, my son has a mental health issue, but he's 27, so I don't fully know or understand the diagnosis. He seems committed to a wellness plan. That's great. But I struggle with worry about him, what his future will look like. Will he be able to build a career to support himself and a family, have a healthy relationship, etc.? I'm struggling to have faith over fear. Mm. Your thoughts on
I
that?
Yeah. Kelly, you know what? I think this is the reason why all of us are here
Absolutely.
is the fear. Every time anything happens that take a child, African American child, off track, causes fear, just total fear with the parents, because we're parenting on the edge. We're worried that they're going to be in the system, they're not going to be able to take care of themselves. We all are thinking that as I'm older than Kelly, and as I think about like doing less work, I mean, I'm not going to retire, but just doing less work, we worry that they're not ready to take over their own mantle. But I mean, honestly think it's our trauma that we parent a lot out of fear as African Americans. And
Hmm.
it is so painful to say. And it's if in it I feel some sense of shame in saying it, that but I think that a lot of us parent out of just fear. And when something happens, we just hit panic buttons because we're so afraid. And I think that that's normal. But again, I want to say to the parent, because normally when we're on this show, a lot of times we'll go right into what to do. But I want to, like, again, be really respectful and acknowledge the fact that you had a child that sought out his own help and created his own wellness plan. And for you to understand that that does not come from a vacuum, it is because you laid the foundation for it. You and your husband or the child's father laid the foundation for it. Um, so there is that. Um, and ways to support someone who's well into adulthood is to, like, ask them, do they need help with resources? Ask them, do they need referrals? Don't just send the referrals. Okay. Ask, do you have the best support? Can I help you with that? Can I call Miss Kelly and see if she knows someone that can help? I get a lot of referrals like that. Because Kelly or someone else knows that I specialize in difficult diagnostic cases. I get a lot of referrals like that. Um, are you happy and satisfied with your counselor? Right? Getting the right help is the most important thing. So the best thing you can do is to assist him in getting the best help. And it could be just finding resources, it could be paying for resources, it can be helping them connect and helping them to understand that we're now on psychologists and social workers are now pretty much nationwide. And so, I've been referring to a practice that specializes in Black males, and they're a nationwide practice. They have clinicians everywhere, and they do telehealth nationwide. So just to sort of have them understand the way of the world. Like I've been sending my clients and sending my friends the maps of our, psychology compact. And that's stuff that you can pass along your children, not necessarily, here's what you do with depression. But did you know, David, that psychologists can now practice in 40 states, so you can find someone that you like that specializes in, your kind of issues and deals with your kind of issues exclusively. So share resources, not too much, but share resources also. But it sounds like you guys are putting up a supportive front. You're back there when he's looking back there ready to help. And I think that that's probably prudent. If you at some point in time feel like you need some advice, it's also good sometimes to go talk to someone yourself about ways to support a child with mental illness.
Thank you for that. The faith over fear is so incredibly important.
Yes.
So incredibly
Yes.
important. And belief and hope, believing
And
that all is going to be well. It's
I
already
actually,
well.
I'm sorry, Kelly.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I actually have been doing a lot of prayer about myself. That I can be the mother that I'm supposed to be with an adult child, instead of saying having the fear come out of my mouth. Right? What should I be saying? What's the most supportive thing that I can say? To sort of not have the fear run the show. If you know what I mean, Kelly. The many
Oh, I
conversations
do.
about this.
All the time, every day. Even last night, Chris called, and this is, I think, interesting that we're having this conversation. He called, and he is, I can say it out loud now because he's made the decision fully. So he is transferring and looking at different institutions. And so he goes, Mom,
Mhm.
what do you think about such and such? And I said, well, I don't really know much about that school. What do you
Mhm.
know? And so, of course,
Mhm.
my whole entire spirit and being, I'm praying for him to go to my alma mater, which happens to have a Black swim team, the only one. No,
Mhm.
but he's looking at a lot of other large PWIs. And
Mhm.
so I don't know much about that, but I would, ask these questions as you're coming up with what your decision will be. Ultimately, it's your
Mhm.
decision. I want you to be happy. That's all that matters, is that you're happy
Right.
in this next phase. And one step at a time. And he said,
Right.
okay, well, maybe. He said, are you around tomorrow? Can we talk about it? I said, sure, I'm around all
Right.
day.
And
But it
and
was
Kelly,
a
that doesn't.
different, but
Right.
such a muscle that I've not
Right.
leveraged, but for being here every week to
Right.
pause what I wanted to say and say, absolutely not, that school. So all the things that I would normally say
Right.
pre-sunrise. And I
Right.
just quieted that voice and decided, because I also know he's got to make the decision. And I know that
Mhm.
God's going to have him make the right decision for him. And I believe, and I've put it in existence, that he'll be at Howard. And that
Right.
will be amazing for him. However, if he ends up somewhere else, that will also be fine. It'll be great because that's what God has ordered. For those of you who don't believe, or whatever you may believe in or not, I'm very much grounded in the faith. And yeah, so we'll see. And I want to just comment, there's a person that says, my adult male son is stuck. I live in fear. May I have the information about the virtual clinicians?
Yes.
Yes, so Dr. Linda will put it out there, and what I would say is we'll also put it in our next mailing. Oh, and I see another question. I'm so sorry I missed it. We posted a question in the chat above that may have been missed. I apologize. Let's see. Would love to get some recommendations on finding a good family therapist if time permits. And yes, I will email you as well. Thank you for acknowledging. I did not see your earlier note. So the question is about looking for finding a good family therapist.
Um, I fully urge you to ask people, ask people that you know, ask your primary care, because that's the best way to get local help. Because especially with family counseling, I think that that's pretty important that you get somebody
Mhm.
local, even if you
Mhm.
do some sessions online, but at the very least you can start locally. And so you can have some joint sessions in the same room together. So that's one thing. Look, you can look up on Psychology Today, Therapy for
Therapy
Black
for
Girls,
Black girls.
yeah,
Mhm.
all those resources that are listed on the SonRise Project. You can look at, again, Psychology Today has them. You can search by race on there. You can search by insurance. So there's just all kinds of ways that you can get a therapist, but I will tell you that finding a good family therapist is not easy. Finding a good marital therapist is not easy. But they do exist. But if you have friends that are therapists, or if you need someone to lean on someone, utilize all the support that you can to do that. But even if you can't find one, just go to an individual therapist, because a lot of times I'm not a family therapist, but what I do is I deal with families. I bring in dad, I bring in mom, I sometimes have joint sessions. So just because the person is a single therapist does not mean that they don't deal with families. And because when you're treating teenagers and young adults, like I had my entire psychology career, you're definitely treating families. Your client is the child, the parents, and the interaction between them. What
And
was
there
the
are other
okay.
resources like NAMI.org,
Right,
the American
exactly.
Psychological Association. There's actually 5
Yes.
incredible organizations led by Black male CEOs. I had the
Mm-hmm.
pleasure of meeting them this past week. But we will make sure that we add even more resources to our website and make sure that, and
Mm-hmm.
thank you, you gave me your email. I'll make sure I send them to you as well, directly. So thank you for the note. Is there anything else we may have missed today as we get ready to close out our open session? A friendly reminder to fill out the survey. We want to get feedback. We appreciate that. Next
So
Sunday, yes, please, Linda.
I put in the link for the weight room, which is the black male practice that has been established, and they're out of Virginia and all over the country.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. So we will add that to the website as well. Next Sunday, of course, is Mother's Day, so we will be here. And some of us, may have lost our mother or may have lost someone, whether it was recently or years ago. Um, the grief is still there, I can imagine. So we have somebody that has been well versed in that space in grief and loss. And we will also celebrate moms. So that's next Sunday. Then we have our next Brothers Unfiltered, Safe Space for Black Men. The first one was incredibly um, powerful, apparently. It was Black men only on the phone. Dr. Rick Wallace hosts those, and that information is also on the website. We encourage you to have your loved ones, sons, or other loved ones register and be a part of that. So that is on Wednesday. No, it's May 16th. Yes, coming up. Sorry. Wednesday, May 15th at 7:30 p.m. Dr. Linda, did we get any? There's nothing else in the chat that I see,
Mm.
but Dr. Linda has agreed to be here the first Sunday of every month for these open support group sessions. And so I really appreciate you. Did you want to close with anything else?
Only again, just to like recognize when you're in situations with your children, a lot of you've done really good work. Because they're there and they're presenting themselves to you in crises. And that was the thing that underlied this whole conversation, is that you placed yourself in a position where you could be there in a crisis. And so I just want to say kudos.
I love that. And for you too, Dr. Linda, I just want to say, like you mentioned something earlier. You have been on this particular call, oh gosh, at least 40 times. And we've been doing this for 220 weeks, maybe or so, so 4 years. And you mentioned sometimes a therapist needs therapy. So I thank you. I want to thank you always because you have the right, you show up always, no matter where you are. You say, I'm going to be here the first Sunday of every month. So if someone needs something, someone needs some professional help, because I'm not a professional. I don't claim that. I just have a lived experience in one area. I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for being here and always saying yes.
And I just want to acknowledge that when you came to me and you told me you wanted to do this, I promised you that I would walk alongside of you as a mental health
Yeah.
expert. And it's been, I don't even know where it's going to go, Kelly.
No.
And we didn't necessarily think it would go anywhere. But my thought was, if there's one person every week that feels a little bit
Absolutely.
better when they get off the phone, then we've done our job.
Absolutely. Gosh, I feel like one person at a time. I say that all the time. So I'll close us up with a prayer. Dr. Vicky is actually speaking and preaching as we speak, and I'll do my best and close this out for this week. So God, we thank you for this beautiful, beautiful Sunday that you've made. We choose to rejoice. We choose to give you glory. We choose to trust you. We choose to have faith over fear. We know that all will be well with our children, with our adult children, with all of our children, and with us. We know that acceptance and having faith is the key to peace so that we don't suffer unnecessarily. God, we trust you with our entire lives, with every detail, with every conversation. We thank you and we know that you're working things out for us, for our good and for your glory. I pray now for traveling mercy for Dr. Linda as she prepares to travel back to the DC area. And I pray for our safety and well-being today and all week and all month as we begin Mental Health Awareness Month. Let's breathe, let's rejoice, let's be grateful. In you and for you and in your name we pray. Amen. All right. Have a wonderful week.
Have a wonderful week.
Thank you. We will see you next Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And if you miss it, you can play the replay on our website. Thank you, everyone. Have an amazing day.
Hey, Kelly, can you stay on for a sec?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because my phone needs charging, so I can't call you.
Okay, Stem. Yeah, thank you.